She left quietly after discovering her husband's affair, 10 years into their marriage. A year later, the ex-husband, from whom she had vanished without a trace, found her, pleading, "You're pathetic. 10 years, and you've given me nothing. You were a mistake from the start. She is everything you could never be. Young, beautiful, and worth my time. Get out of my sight." Those were the merciless words her husband spat at her the night she discovered his affair. After a decade of sacrifice, love, and devotion, he had shattered her dignity with laughter and contempt. But instead of fighting, she swallowed her pain, packed her bags in silence, walked out the door, and disappeared without a trace. For a year, she lived in hiding, rebuilding herself piece by piece, far from the man who had broken her. But what he never imagined was that the woman he mocked, calling her useless, would one day be the very person he came looking for. Broken, desperate, and begging for what he once threw away. Sometimes, those we crush rise stronger than our worst nightmares. Sometimes, the woman we thought was a mistake becomes the one we cannot live without. This is the story of a woman who turned silent heartbreak into unshakable power. And today, it is being retold by me. Hello, family, and welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but sincere request. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and how this story touches you. The duck rice sat untouched on the table. The steam had long since vanished. The candles were melted halfway down. Beatriz Almeida checked the clock again, then straightened the cutlery, though it was already perfectly aligned. She had worn the blue dress Duarte had once called understated. She had put her hair up the way he liked it, neat and tidy. She had ironed the napkins and folded them like small envelopes. She had kept dinner warm, then warm again, and finally she turned off the oven and waited. At 10:41 p.m., her phone buzzed. "You should see where your husband is tonight." A photo followed. Duarte Carvalho, sleeves rolled up, leaning over someone in a dim restaurant in Barro Alto. The woman beside him had glossy hair and red lips. Her hand rested boldly on his chest. She was smiling the way women smile when they think they are winning. Catarina Mendez. Beatriz held the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white for 3 long breaths. Nothing moved. Not her lungs, not her face, not even the thought that might have saved her. She set the phone down, folded the dishcloth once, then again. She went to the mirror in the hall and practiced a gentle expression. She didn't want to fight. She wanted the truth. At 11:37, a key turned in the lock. Duarte walked in like a man who had never been told no. He tossed his keys into the bowl and glanced at the mirror, adjusting his hair with 2 fingers. He smelled of a different perfume. "You're late," Beatrice said. Her voice was gentle. It had to be, or it would break. "I'm important," he said, not looking at her. "I made dinner. You can eat it tomorrow." She lifted the phone from the table and held it out, the picture facing him. "Who is she to you, Duarte?" He looked down, didn't flinch. He smiled, a small, cruel smile. Someone who doesn't bore me. It's Catarina, Beatriz said. You told me she was a client. He took off his jacket and hung it on a chair as if he had arrived at a hotel. She is, and more. More? Beatrice repeated. He turned to her, as if only then, remembering she could hear him. His eyes were bright. This kind of moment fed him. You want me to lie? Should I say we're friends? Should I say it's business? I want you to respect me enough to tell the truth, Beatrice said. Her hands were shaking. She hid them, gripping the back of a chair. You don't want the truth, he said, stepping closer. It would hurt your feelings. But let's try it. The corner of his mouth lifted. You're pathetic. 10 years, and you've given me nothing. She is everything you could never be. Young, beautiful, and worth my time. Get out of my sight. The words were a slap without a hand. They stung the way cold stings, digging deep and staying there. Nothing? Beatrice echoed. I quit my job because you asked me to host clients. I sold my car so you could buy your first inventory. I spent sleepless nights doing your bookkeeping when we couldn't afford an accountant. I defended you to my parents when you skipped mass and birthdays and everything that made us a family. He laughed at her list. You sound like a maid reciting her chores. You think folding my shirts makes you a partner? You think making duck rice makes you a wife? You are a routine, Beatrice, a habit. I want a life. You want a divorce? She asked. She said the word plainly, because begging wouldn't save her. Yes, he said, almost cheerfully. And before you ask, no, you're not getting much. You didn't build this, did you? I did. The bank statements with my transfers say otherwise. Did you transfer them because you were trying to be important? The doorbell rang. Beatrice's stomach tightened into a knot. Who is that? Duarte's smile grew sharper. You already know. He opened the door. Catarina walked in as if a spotlight followed her. Silk blouse, tight skirt, heels that said she didn't plan on running from anything. Her perfume bloomed in the hallway like a claim. Hello, Duarte, she said, kissing his cheek. Then she turned and noticed Beatrice, as if Beatrice were a painting that didn't match the room. Oh, you're still here? This is my home, Beatrice said. Is it? Catarina asked, her eyes sweeping over the table. The candles, the cold food, the napkins folded like promises no one kept. It looks like a waiting room. Catarina, Beatrice said, have you no shame? Shame? Catarina laughed softly. I'm not the one who stood still for 10 years and called it love. Duarte chuckled, pleased. She has a point. Beatrice stared. I quit my job for you. You were weak, he said. Don't blame me for your failures. I sold my car for you. He shrugged. A car. And I pawned my grandmother's ring when your supplier demanded cash. Your choice, he said. A bad one. Not my fault. I lied to my father when he asked if you were good to me. He should have minded his own business, Duarte said. You were always too loyal to the wrong people. Catarina walked to the table and lifted the lid from the serving dish. She sniffed. Dry, she said. She replaced the lid with a click and smiled at Beatrice, as if she'd done something clever. You should go. It's sad watching you take up space that isn't yours. You enjoy this? Beatrice asked the other woman. I enjoy getting what I want, Catarina said. I've spent a year listening to him complain about you, your voice, your clothes, the way you iron his shirts, and think it's romance. He used to stop in the garage before coming upstairs, just to breathe. That's how heavy you felt. Duarte nodded, like a man confirming a rave review. It's true. Beatrice wrapped her arms around herself, because there was nothing else she could think to hold. When did it start? Duarte looked bored. Does it matter? Was it our anniversary? Catarina smiled. He was with me that night. We ordered oysters and laughed about how you texted him a picture of candles. You are so kind. Enough, Beatrice whispered. It came out like a prayer for silence, and neither of them heard it. Duarte gestured at her dress. Look at you. That understated blue, the small earrings, the plain face. I told you to go to the salon. You said it was expensive. I told you to buy better clothes. You said we needed to save. We needed to eat, Beatrice said. I needed to feel alive, he snapped. She makes me feel alive. She walks into a room, and it gets brighter. You walk in, and it feels like a library. Catarina tilted her head like a girl who had never had to make room. Some women elevate a man. Others diminish him. You diminish. You don't know me, Beatrice said. I know enough, Catarina replied. I know you're standing in a kitchen at midnight, arguing about chicken while he's thinking about the hotel we booked. Beatrice's fingers pressed into the back of the chair until the wood bit into her skin. The hotel? Catarina smiled. Corner suite, big windows, warm lighting. Everything looks right there? Duarte checked his watch. We should go. Beatriz stared at him. You were going to leave me here and go to a hotel with her after this? Why not? He said. Do you think you matter more now that you know you matter less? Did the mystery keep you useful? Catarina laughed. An honest, mean laugh. He tells me the parts he shouldn't. It's what men do when they respect you. Beatrice took a breath. It tasted like metal. I'm your wife for a few more days, she said. You'll get the papers, Duarte said. Sign them. Don't make this complicated. Complicated? Beatrice repeated. You invited your girlfriend into our home to humiliate me? Catarina ran a finger along the edge of the counter. We had to make sure you wouldn't cling. I never clung, Beatrice said. You clung to a dream of being necessary, Duarte said. I need a partner who elevates me, not a maid who lists her chores. I did elevate you, Beatrice said. You were a nobody when we met. That's funny, he said. I was a nobody because I was with you. Catarina clicked her tongue. Stop letting her talk. It's boring. Duarte held out his hand. Keys. Beatrice looked at his palm. She had placed keys in that palm 1,000 times. The car keys when he was late. The office keys when he forgot them. The house keys in the hospital lobby after his appendix surgery. She placed her wedding ring in his hand. The sound of the metal on his skin felt loud. And the card? He said. You can't use it. It's on my account. Leave it. She took it out of her wallet and set it on the counter. He picked it up and tucked it into his pocket. Your phone, he said. Give it here. I'm having the line cut. You can get your own. Catarina smirked. Don't worry. There are cheap phones for people like you. Beatrice handed him the phone. She didn't look at their picture on the lock screen. She didn't look at the messages. She let it go. Go pack, Duarte said. Take what fits in one suitcase. I want the room cleared out by 1. By 1? Beatrice repeated. He smiled. You're good with deadlines. She walked down the hall. Her knees wanted to buckle, but they remembered how to move. In the bedroom, she pulled the small suitcase from the closet and opened it on the bed. She folded shirts, rolled jeans, took underwear, socks, and a sweater her mother liked. She paused at the jewelry box. Her mother's thin gold chain lay beside the bracelet she wore on holidays. She tucked them both inside a sock and hid them among the clothes. Her wedding band was gone, leaving the velvet slot empty, like a coin waiting for a machine. She left it. In the bathroom, she took a toothbrush, a comb, and a small bottle of lotion. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was pale. Her eyes were steady. She thought of the woman she had been. She didn't say goodbye to her. That woman had done her best. It was enough to leave. When she returned down the hall with the suitcase, Duarte and Catarina were by the island. Duarte had poured Douro wine, 2 glasses, red, the bottle Beatriz had been saving for their next anniversary. Catarina raised her glass in a small toast. 2 upgrades, she said. Duarte clinked his glass against hers. 2 upgrades. The keys, Duarte said to Beatriz. The mailbox key, too. She dropped the mailbox key into his palm. He didn't thank her. Alarm code? He asked. She told him the numbers. He typed them into his phone and smiled like a man who had won something. Where will you go? Catarina asked, her voice laced with sweet poison. I don't know, Beatriz said. Catarina leaned closer, her eyes glittering. Do you have anyone to call? Friends? Family? Oh, that's right. You pushed them away for him. She looked at Duarte, delighted with her own cruelty. She'll be crying in some cheap boarding house. Isn't that sad? Duarte offered a sideways smile. She was a volunteer in her own life. He turned back to Beatriz. Listen, don't bother my parents, don't show up at my office, and don't talk to my clients. If you make a scene, I'll make sure you never work in this city again. You already tried, Beatriz said. She couldn't help it. The truth escaped and hung in the air between them. He blinked. Surprised, she knew. Then he laughed. Good. Then we understand each other. Catarina touched his wrist. We're late, aren't we? He said. He gave Beatrice one last look, as if she were a stain he had finally managed to clean. Get out. Beatrice grabbed the handle of her suitcase. Goodbye, Duarte. Don't be dramatic, he said. She looked at Catarina. You don't have to be cruel, she said. Catarina smiled. I'm not cruel. I'm confident. Beatrice opened the door. The hallway smelled of cleaning spray and someone else's dinner. She stepped out. The door clicked shut behind her. It remained unlocked for a second. Then the deadbolt slid home. In the elevator, she pressed the button for the ground floor. She watched the numbers descend. Her hands were cold. She tucked them under her arms to warm them. She remembered the first time she rode this elevator as a wife, holding a potted plant with a ribbon tied around it. She remembered thinking she had finally arrived. She had been wrong. In the lobby, the security guard looked up. Good evening, Mrs. Carvalho. She almost corrected him, but didn't. Good evening, she said, and walked out into the cool night air. She didn't cry on the sidewalk. She just stood there until a bolt pulled up. She gave the driver an address that wasn't her home. Staring out the window, she watched the city lights blur. She thought of 10 years of meals, 10 years of lists, 10 years of hoping he would come home early, of hoping he would touch her shoulder and mean it. The guest house room was clean and loud with the hum of an old air conditioner. She paid in cash. She placed her suitcase on the bed, took off her shoes, and set them side by side, toes pointing out, like a pair of small boats. She sat in the chair by the window and stared at the parking lot. She didn't sleep. She didn't call anyone. At dawn, she took off her ring and left it on the plastic nightstand. It looked like a coin she didn't want. At 7 in the morning, she found a month-to-month rental online, a tiny ground floor studio with one window. She met the landlord at noon and paid the deposit with the last of her savings. Quiet building, he said. No parties. I won't be a problem, she said. She bought bread, milk, peanut butter, and a box of cheap tea. She stood in the empty room, the grocery bag on the counter, and felt the silence choose her. It wasn't cruel. It asked for nothing. It was just a place. She opened a notebook. On the first page, in neat script, she wrote, "Find work. Stay quiet. Begin again." She underlined "begin again" once. For 10 years, in her old life, all she had done was clean up. Duarte poured a second glass of wine and handed it to Catarina like a prize. They stood close, their shoulders touching. He loved the way her laughter sounded against the cabinets. She loved her own image in the dark reflection of the kitchen window. "She'll come crawling back," Duarte said. "They always do." "She can't live without you," said Catarina. "She can't live without anyone," he corrected. "Alone, she's nothing, useless," Catarina said, testing the word on her tongue. "Weak," Duarte agreed. They clinked their glasses again. Then Duarte took a slow sip and smiled into the reflection as if it were a camera. "To better things," he said. Catarina slid her hand into his back pocket. "To everything she could never be." They laughed, an easy, brilliant sound. They didn't see the empty space on a nightstand in a small guest house room across town. They didn't hear the tear that never fell. They didn't feel the small, stubborn thing forming where the pain had been. They didn't see a woman turning her grief into a plan. They only saw themselves, and the storm they thought they had escaped was already beginning to form, quiet and patient. The world didn't stop because Beatriz Almeida had disappeared. It just made room for the story people preferred. "She ran off," someone wrote under a photo from a party. "Couldn't handle losing him," another replied. "Pathetic woman," a third added. And the thread bloomed, filled with smiling faces in polished dining rooms and noisy brunch spots. Duarte Carvalho and Catarina Mendez told their version without raising their voices. Duarte said, "She was fragile." Catarina said, "We tried to help her, but she was just so bitter." Heads nodded in sympathy. Waiters poured more wine. The words stuck to Beatrice's name like chewing gum. In a small studio with a window that faced a brick wall, Beatrice ate toast and counted her cash. Rent, groceries, a new phone on a cheap plan. Her notebook lay open on the counter. Find work, stay quiet, begin again. She started by cleaning offices after hours. The supervisor gave her a plastic ID badge and a key. Emptying bins, mopping floors, wiping glass. It wasn't hard. It was quiet. She liked the low hum of the vending machine and the gleam of the floors when she was done. One woman from the night crew recognized her in the elevator. "Aren't you?" she began, then caught herself. "It's okay," Beatrice said. "You can say it." "Aren't you Duarte Carvalho's wife?" "I was," Beatrice said. "Oh," the woman said, embarrassed. "I'm sorry." Beatrice nodded, stepped out, and kept walking. She didn't have the energy to hate a stranger for asking a question that carried a ghost. In the mornings, she served coffee at a diner where a cook sang old songs over the sizzle of the grill. The owner hired her without asking for references. He liked the way she said, "Good morning," as if she meant it. The tips made the days easier. In the afternoons, She looked after a little boy named Matthias, while his mother worked a split shift. Matthias would line up toy cars on the rug and tell her long, serious stories about colors. Once, he asked her, "Are you sad?" He asked it the way children ask about the weather. Sometimes she told him it was okay. "I cry when my socks don't match," he said. Then he patted her hand and went back to making siren noises with a blue car. At night, she studied. She borrowed old business textbooks from the library and watched free online lectures. She learned how to read contracts, create invoices, price services. She practiced on a spreadsheet until the numbers behaved. She took a free food safety course and passed the test on her first try. She wrote a small business plan. It didn't look like much, but it had steps. She could feel her foot finding the first one. The memories still came, like movies playing on a wall she couldn't turn off. She saw the day she sold her car, the money used to cover Duarte's first shipment. The buyer had asked, "Are you sure?" And she had said yes, pretending not to hear the engine roar to life for someone else. She remembered pawning her grandmother's ring when a supplier said, "Wire transfer only." She told herself, "It's just metal and memory, and they can survive without the metal." She remembered feeding him lines at a meeting when he showed up unprepared. She had whispered, "Talk about the pilot. Use the 70% figure." And he had nodded and repeated her words, smiling as if he'd invented them. Later, he'd said, "You saved me," but he'd said it as if he were tired of being saved. When the memories came, she would stand at the sink and let the tap run until the water turned cold. Then she would say to herself out loud, "You tried." He was the one who threw it all away, claiming it made the room feel bigger. A month into this new life, she walked past a cafe with a glass front and saw a familiar profile inside. Graying hair, a sharp suit, warm eyes that missed nothing. Mr. Joao Loureiro. He had managed the firm where she'd worked before marrying Duarte. He had been the rare sort of boss who thanked people by name. She hesitated at the door. Pride said, "Walk away." Another voice said, "Go in." He looked up as the bell chimed. "Beatriz," he said, surprise breaking into a smile. "How wonderful to see you." She sat down, clasping her hands so he wouldn't see them shake. "Hello, Mr. Loureiro." They talked about safe things at first. The coffee, the weather. Then he asked, gently but directly, "Are you all right?" She opened her mouth to lie and found she couldn't. "No," she said, "but I will be." He nodded, pleased with the truth. "You always were steady," he said. "I have to be," she said. "I'm starting over." He slid a business card across the table. "Come by my office tomorrow, 10 o'clock. In his small office, its walls heavy with books, he poured her a coffee and pushed a yellow legal pad toward her. "Tell me what you want," he said. "I want to be independent," she said. "I want to earn money that is my own. I want to be useful for something that isn't someone else's dream." He smiled, not kindly, but the way a coach smiles when a runner calls out a target time. "Good," he said. "Use your strengths. You're organized. You see problems before they happen. You make spaces work." "I have no capital," she said. "No name. Nothing." "You have a brain and a spine," he said. "That's a valuable currency." He tapped the pad. "There's a gap in this city. People want events that run like a machine and feel like magic. The luxury firms overcharge and underdeliver. The budget ones drown. You can exist in the middle and be excellent. I don't have a kitchen, she said. Rent one, he said. Start with coordination. Find honest suppliers, build a list. Take small jobs and do them perfectly. Let people talk. If you do it well, they'll be your advertising for free. I'm afraid, she said softly. He nodded. Fear is friction. At first, it slows you down, but then it creates heat. Use the heat. He slid a small list of names over. These are small investors I trust, not sharks. They put in small amounts to help people start. If the plan is solid, she looked at the names as if they might bite. Why are you helping me? Because you were the only person in my office who never took credit for work you didn't do, he said. And because I hate waste, you were being wasted. She built the framework in a week. She registered a name, Norte Events, because she wanted something that sounded like turning on a light. She built a one-page website with her own two hands. It made 3 promises. We are on time. We are invisible until needed. We fix what's broken before you see it. She wrote a price sheet that almost sounded apologetic. Then she crossed out the apologies. She rented 4-hour blocks in a community kitchen twice a week. She bought a second-hand clothes steamer and a box of safety pins. She put together a small kit, stain remover, thread, Band-Aids, breath mints, painkillers, sewing needles. It felt like armor. Her first client came from a flyer on a laundromat bulletin board. A mother of twins needed help with a first birthday party in a church basement. Nothing fancy, the woman said. Just not chaos. No chaos, Beatriz agreed. We can do that. She made a plan on a single sheet of paper. Arrival, cake, presents, cleanup. She brought balloons and a cheap but pretty tablecloth she found in a sale bin. She tied ribbons on the plastic forks so they looked cared for. The party was small and warm. The twins wore paper crowns that kept falling over their eyes. When juice spilled, Beatrice was there with a cloth before it hit the floor. When a toddler cried, she had stickers in her pocket. At the end, the mother hugged her. You made it look easy, she said. Easy wasn't the right word. Beatrice went home with aching feet and a heart that didn't ache for the wrong reason. The next job came from a nurse whose sister had seen the party photos. Small wedding, the nurse said over the phone. Backyard. We need someone who knows when to hand me a tissue before I know I need one. I can do that, Beatrice said. She mapped the yard on a grid of sticky notes and borrowed extra string lights from a neighbor who ran a thrift shop. She tied eucalyptus branches to the lampposts to perfume the air with a green, sharp scent. She coordinated a catering truck that arrived late and somehow made the timing of the dishes feel intentional. When the bride's zipper jammed, Beatrice fixed it with a crochet hook, a prayer, and a steady hand born of 1,000 small rescues. When the power failed, she moved the band to the veranda without missing a beat. At the end of the night, the bride whispered, You saved us 3 times, and no one even noticed. That was the art of it. Beatrice issued invoices and sent them with a note that said, Thank you. The money trickled into her new account. Not much, but it was clean. She bought more string lights. She bought a better garment steamer. She bought a dolly because her back told her she wasn't 25 anymore. By day, she still wiped counters and served coffee. By night, she read vendor contracts and watched videos of people folding napkins into the shape of lilies. She learned how long ice lasts in a tub and how much lemon zest brightens a sauce. She learned the names of flowers that wouldn't wilt under hot lights and how to build a timeline backward from a single champagne toast. She learned to mark everything with gaffer tape and to befriend the janitors. She wrote notes to herself, like, check the bathrooms and speak softly when people are crying. The whispers hadn't gone away. A photo of Duarte and Catarina surfaced on a yacht, captioned, True Love Wins. Someone tagged Beatriz by accident and then untagged her as if they'd touched a hot stove. In a supermarket line, she heard two women behind her whispering, She just vanished. He's so much happier. She bought her bread and milk and left without dropping the eggs. Sometimes she'd cut through the park on her way home and sit on a bench while the dog walkers passed. Once, she saw Duarte's car drive down the street. Catarina's laughter spilled from the window like a trumpet blast. The car turned the corner, leaving her alone with a squirrel who had no opinion on anything at all. She felt the old ache reach for her, then stop. It didn't fit inside her ribs the same way anymore. Mr. Lorero sent her small jobs from people who trusted him. A luncheon for a non-profit that needed to look lovely on a shoestring budget. A retirement party for a teacher who cried when the band played her favorite song. Beatriz built each event like a house with hidden beams. Vendors started taking her calls. First ring, and you pay on time, a surprised florist told her. We like that. A DJ told her, you give me the roadmap and the room to improvise. That's rare. She kept a small list on her phone labeled Good People and added names after every job. By late spring, Norte Eventos had a schedule, not full, but fuller than empty. Beatrice hired her first assistant, a university student named Rita, who showed up early and learned fast. She hired a second, Luisa, who could carry 3 chairs in each hand and remember where they all went. She paid them a fair wage and fed them before the guests ate, because she'd once seen entire crews shaking with hunger while men in suits complimented the sea bass. Is your boss nice? A guest asked Rita at a wedding, as Beatrice crawled under a table to hide a cable. Rita looked down and smiled. The best. Between jobs, Beatrice met Mr. Lorero at his office to go over her numbers. He circled the places she undercharged and drew arrows where she should say no. You don't have to take everything, he said. Saying no is a power adults learn to wield. I'm afraid if I say no, nothing else will come, she admitted. Then practice, he said. Say, we're not the right fit, out loud, when you're brushing your teeth. Then call me and say it to one person. She tried it. It felt like swallowing a stone that turned into a pearl. Later, on a hot Thursday, he called, Are you ready for better shoes? An investor friend wants to meet someone who can organize an investor gala without it feeling like a funeral. An investor gala? She repeated, pacing her studio apartment because the room was too small for her nerves. They like quiet competence, he said. Just be yourself. She ironed her best white blouse, the one without frayed threads at the cuffs. She wore black trousers that fit well and shoes that didn't pinch. She put her hair up because loose hair gets in the way of clear thinking. She arrived 10 minutes early and sat in the reception area until the receptionist said, They'll see you now. The office smelled of money and lemon polish. The conference room held 3 people, a woman with a sharp geometric haircut, a man with a casual, expensive watch, and a third who smiled without showing his teeth. We're Stonebridge Capital, the woman said. We host a quarterly gala to keep our limited partners happy. Our last event was messy. We want efficiency, warmth, and utter invisibility, the man said. We don't want to hear the word hiccup. What do you need from us? The third one asked. Your guest count and your honest budget, Beatriz said. Your notes on dietary needs, your top 3 priorities. The rest you can hand over to me. They asked questions. She answered them plainly. She explained how she built timelines, her standards for vendors, and the way she created contingency plans. She didn't sell a dream. She sold a plan. The woman looked at the man. The man gave an almost imperceptible nod. Who have you worked with? The third one asked. People who pay their bills and treat their staff like they matter, she said. Names you wouldn't know, but I can give you their numbers. The woman smiled. That was the right answer. 2 days later, she sat at her small desk with an email open, her hands flat on the wood because her fingers wanted to fly. Stonebridge was offering a contract, full rate, reasonable terms, deposit wired upon signing. She read it twice, then a third time. She sent it to Mr. Loureiro, who replied, Good contract. Sign, breathe. She signed. She sent the PDF. She watched her banking app long enough to feel foolish, and then watched it some more until the numbers changed. Deposit received. Clean money. Rita and Luisa shrieked with joy in the empty hall, where they were chalking out a dance floor for Saturday's wedding. Boss, Rita said, spinning. You did it. We did it, Beatriz said. And it was true. She ordered the good coffee for her team and bought a new toolbox with drawers that didn't stick. She wrote a thank you note to Stonebridge on heavy cardstock and sent it with a stamp that had a flower on it, because details mattered. On the way home, she passed a sleek billboard on the highway, Carvalho and Associates, building tomorrow. Duarte's face was smaller than the logo, but still there, still smug. Her stomach tightened, then eased. The billboard was just a billboard. 3 nights later, she was in the commissary kitchen blanching asparagus when her cheap phone vibrated on the prep table. It was a number she didn't recognize. Hello? She said, holding it between her ear and shoulder while she counted out skewers. Ms. Almeida? A smooth voice asked, a voice used to closing deals. This is Claudia Antunes from Stonebridge Capital. A quick question about the gala. We're moving the date to the same weekend as the Carvalho and Associates Investor Forum. Can you still cover it? We hear they're struggling. Beatriz held a skewer halfway to the tray. Yes, she said. We can cover it. Perfect, Claudia said. Also, I should tell you, the other firm we were considering. She paused, as if deciding whether to be generous. It was the in-house events team from Carvalho and Associates. We decided against them. A bit chaotic, we were told. Beatrice's fingers stilled. In the reflection of the steel refrigerator door, she saw her own face. The same eyes she'd carried for 35 years, only firmer now. We appreciate your clarity, she said. After the call, she stood in the hum of the kitchen with the skewer in her hand and let the truth arrive on silent feet. Stonebridge had chosen her. Duarte's company had wanted the money, the attention, the space. He would not get it. She finished the tray, washed her hands, and sent a text to Mr. Loureiro. We got it, and Duarte didn't. He replied with a single thumbs up. Then another message. Keep a cool head. Deliver. News travels faster than noise. Beatrice switched off the kitchen lights and stepped out into the evening. The air smelled like rain that might come. Across the street, A couple argued softly about nothing important. A bus hissed by. Somewhere, a radio played a song that used to make her cry, and now it just made her walk a little slower. She passed a poster for a charity gala and recognized the font, the Crestwell Foundation annual benefit. She wondered who was running it, who would be standing in the wings with their hands clasped as the speeches ran long, who would keep the water cold and the lights warm and the night whole. She wondered if anyone would thank them. At home, she laid the signed contract on her table and smoothed it with her palm. Her window still looked out onto a brick wall. The room was still small, but when she turned on the lamp, the light felt like the northern lights. In her notebook, under the 3 lines she'd written on the first day, she added a fourth in careful script. Walk in the same doors, different name, different power. Across town, Duarte and Catarina sat in a lavish office overlooking the river, their calendar filled with red circles. Catarina tapped a fingernail on the desk while Duarte swiped through his phone with tense fingers. Stonebridge passed, he said. They went with someone called Norte Eventos. He laughed, a short, sharp sound. Never heard of them. Who are they? Can we buy them? Catarina asked, her brow furrowed. Duarte shook his head. Small-time outfit, no website to speak of. Probably someone's hobby. He tossed the phone on the couch and forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It's fine. We'll get the next one. He didn't know who the woman behind the name was. He didn't know that the first investor he'd ever pitched was having coffee with Mr. Loriro that very afternoon, saying, "It's a new world. He's not as careful as he thinks." He didn't know that the first door he had ever closed in Beatriz's face had just been replaced. Beatriz washed her single bowl, placed it in the dish rack, and turned out the light. The studio apartment was dark and quiet. She lay down and stared at the ceiling, listening to the small sounds of a building that held other lives within its walls. She wasn't running anymore. She was arriving. And the world that had locked her out had just placed a key in her hand without knowing it. A year passed. Beatriz Almeida's mornings now began with calls from her staff. "Boss," Rita said one Tuesday, her voice bright over the phone, "the staging company is early. Chairs are 15 minutes late, but Luisa is already on the phone with them. Clara is handling the loading dock, and Jose says the lighting grid is good to go." "Perfect," Beatrice said, pouring her coffee. "Hold dessert until after the toasts. Keep water on the terrace. You've got this." The kitchen of her townhouse was modest, but it was filled with sunlight. On the counter sat a folder, deed of transfer, Chiato Grand Ballroom. She had signed it the night before. Her company, Almeida Holdings, S.A., now owned 3 venues. Norte Eventos managed the events. Together, they worked like a pair of hands that knew each other well. The city whispered her name now, not Beatriz Carvalho, the forgotten wife, but Senora Almeida, the woman who never failed. Duarte Carvalho's mornings began differently. He sat on his couch, hair unkempt, scrolling through angry emails. Urgent, overdue suspension notice. Investor inquiry meeting, postponed. He groaned, massaging his temples. The bedroom door opened. Catarina emerged in silk, flawless as ever. "Still on that couch?" "I was working," he mumbled. She rolled her eyes. "Reading hate mail isn't working. You're a wreck, Duarte. Do you know how embarrassing this is? People used to envy us." He snapped the laptop shut. "I built this. Without me, you'd still be slinging drinks at that bar." And without me, you'd still be married to a bore, she shot back. At least I projected an image for a while. But now, look at you. She wrinkled her nose. You don't even look rich anymore. Duarte's fists clenched. The money is tight now because you are weak, Catarina cut in. Stonebridge won't even return your calls. Everyone is saying this Senora Almeida is the future. Who is she? Why can't you compete? I still don't know, he grumbled. But I'm going to find out, Catarina said coldly, before you lose the little you have left. The bedroom door clicked shut, leaving him staring at the wall. He whispered to the empty space. I'm not finished. I can't be. But the room offered only silence. Later that week, he met an old investor for coffee. Good to see you, Duarte said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Listen, I have a new proposal. The man held up a hand. Duarte, stop. You've lost your touch. People are nervous. I'm nervous. I've had setbacks, but I can recover. Meanwhile, the investor said dryly, Almeida Holdings always delivers. Would I be a fool not to move my capital there? Duarte's jaw tightened. But who is she? The investor offered a thin, knowing smile. Someone who knows what she's doing. You should take notes. Beatriz's conversations went differently. During a sight check, Jose waved her over. Lights at 70 or 80%? 70, Beatriz said, her voice calm. We want it to feel welcoming, not theatrical. Rita, her assistant, smiled. She always knows the difference, because the details matter. Beatriz believed people notice comfort, not spectacle. Her suppliers loved that tone, quiet, clear, respectful. It was the antithesis of Duarte's blustering arrogance. He was noise. She was order. On the night of the Stonebridge Gala, the grand ballroom of the Chiato shimmered. Guests murmured about the flawless service. Duarte arrived with Catarina on his arm, his suit seeming to swallow a frame diminished by weight he couldn't afford to lose. He scanned the room, his jaw a knot of tension. Smile, Catarina hissed. People are watching. They're watching for Senora Almeida, Duarte grumbled. Then find her, she snapped back. He tried. Near the sponsor wall, he asked a donor, Who's running this? Is it the Senora? Almeida, the man said, sipping champagne. She's remarkable. Pays her people better than most. Do yourself a favor, Duarte. Don't compete. Collaborate. Duarte forced a laugh. He asked a waiter, Where is she, Almeida? The young woman smiled politely. She is everywhere. Upstairs, in the shadows of the balcony box, Beatriz watched. Simple black dress, an earpiece in, her hair pulled back neatly. From her vantage point, she saw a thinner Duarte, smiling too broadly. Catarina glittered beside him, but her hand gripped his arm like a leash. Beatriz's heart remained steady. The master of ceremonies took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, this impeccable evening is brought to you by our presenting partner, Almeida Holdings. Applause followed. Heads turned, searching. Beatriz remained invisible. Down below, Duarte's smile froze. He slipped into a service corridor, desperate. Standing there was Clara, tall and resolute. I need to see Senora Almeida, Duarte said, his voice raw. She's watching you, Clara replied. From where? I need a name. She knows yours, Clara said softly, and closed the door in his face. The chandeliers burned like captured fire above the Chiato ballroom. To the guests, it was a perfect, seamless gala. But for Duarte Carvalho, the brilliant evening felt like a tightening noose. Catarina leaned in, her red silk dress clinging to her like a flame. You look like a ghost, she whispered, her lips still smiling for a photographer across the room. Sit up. Try not to look like you're drowning. I need to meet her, he muttered back. This Senora Almeida? Desperation is ugly, Duarte. I don't care how it looks, he seethed. If she keeps taking everything, I'm finished. Catarina's smile grew sharper. Then perhaps you already are. From the balcony above, Beatriz Almeida watched him unravel. She had planned to remain unseen, but seeing him there, sweating, clinging to his glass like a drowning man to a piece of wreckage, she knew the time had come. She stepped from the shadows and made her way to the stage. The MC saw her and faltered. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great honor that I introduce the woman behind tonight's success, our presenting partner, Senora Almeida herself. The microphone was in her hand. The room fell silent. Her voice was calm and clear. Good evening. Tonight, you have enjoyed the service, the food, the music. Every detail was guided by my company, the Chiado Ballroom, Quinta de Oliveira. They belong to me. I am Senora Almeida. A tremor of whispers ran through the crowd. Duarte's glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. No, he breathed. It can't be. Catarina's head snapped toward the stage. Beatriz? Beatrice's gaze swept the room, finally landing on him like a blade. A year ago, I was called useless, weak, a mistake. Tonight, I stand here not as anyone's shadow, but as the owner of the house you are in. The whispers grew louder. Beatriz Almeida? Didn't he divorce her? She owns all of this? Duarte pushed through the crowd, his face crimson. You're lying, he shouted. You can't own this. Beatriz simply nodded to Jose in the control booth. The screens behind her flickered to life. Deeds, contracts, bank registries, all stamped with her name, Almeida Holdings. Impossible, Duarte stammered. She stole it. She stole it from me. Beatriz's voice cut through the noise like glass. Did I steal or did I give? The screens changed, a pawn slip for a grandmother's ring, a receipt for a sold car, photos of her hunched over ledgers at midnight. She gave him everything, someone whispered. And he mocked her for it, another answered. Duarte's voice cracked. None of that matters. I made you. You are nothing without me. At the front table, Catarina slammed her glass down. Enough, Duarte. He turned on her. What did you say? You said she was weak. Catarina stood, her voice sharp enough to slice the silence. But look at her, and look at you. You are bankrupt, pathetic, a joke. They are applauding her, Duarte, and you? She let out a high, cruel laugh. You are nothing but a man begging for scraps at his ex-wife's table. The laughter spread through the crowd, sharp and merciless. The color drained from Duarte's face as Catarina detached her arm from his, already smiling at another man by the sponsor's table. Duarte staggered and fell to his knees. Beatriz! His voice was a raw, desperate cry. The room went silent again. I was wrong, he sobbed, his hands clasped, his face wet with tears. I mocked you, I hurt you. I didn't know you were everything. Please forgive me. Take me back. Don't leave me like this. He reached for the stage, his hand brushing against the heel of her shoe. Beatrice looked down at him, her expression as unyielding as stone. You threw me away when I loved you, she said softly, her voice carrying through the silent hall. You broke me when I was loyal. You called me nothing. And now that I no longer need you, you plead? Her eyes never wavered. Where was this humility when I bled for you? When I sold my grandmother's ring to cover your failures? He bowed his head, his forehead nearly touching the stage. I was blind. I was cruel. Please, save me. Beatrice's calm was colder than any fury. She leaned down slightly, her voice low, but captured perfectly by the microphone. I have already lived without you, she said, and I lived better. She stepped back, freeing her dress from his grasp. The room thundered with applause. An investor stood. Duarte Carvalho, consider our contracts void. Another followed. And mine. I don't work with cowards. His empire was being dismantled in real time, not by lawyers, but by whispers and applause. Beatrice placed the microphone gently on its stand. This is not revenge, she said, her voice steady. This is truth. Remember this, the people you mock, on their way down, may one day own the roof under which you kneel. The applause roared. Beatrice descended the stage with quiet dignity and walked out, her staff falling in behind her. Duarte remained on the floor, his suit wrinkled, his face streaked with tears, alone in the center of the room that echoed with acclaim for the woman he had thrown away. Beatrice, he whispered to the empty air, how did I lose to you? But she was already gone. Stepping calmly through the service door into the cool night air, she lifted her chin, the city of Lisbon sprawling vast before her. You said I was nothing, she whispered to herself. Tonight, I am everything you can't touch. Behind her, a wave of applause still rattled the walls. Inside, Duarte Carvalho wept, abandoned and disgraced, while Catarina's laughter echoed on the arm of another man. Beatrice walked on, untouchable.